I love you, Purple Head. No, I mean, I'm in love with you. I'm in love with you too, buddy. Is anybody out there? We need help really bad right now. There's another starship approaching. It's the the U.S.S. Entertainer? Uh-oh. We're nearing the end of Lower Decks Season 3, okay? This is Episode 8. Crisis Point. Paradoxus. Is it good? Is it bad? Can we call it for this season? Is this season better than the last one? You know, we've had 2 good ones, a few okay, 1 or 2 bad. For my money, I'm guessing that this season is probably about exactly as good as the last one. I was hoping for better, but maybe they can pull a rabbit out of the hat with the last 2. This episode, though, falls into the good category. This episode, similar to the previous one, is another diversion, but this time with a lot more heart, a lot more care, and a lot more stakes. Things happen in this episode that are emotionally significant for our characters. Things happen that have an impact on the series as a whole. However, this is Lower Decks, and we know how they treat things that impact the season or story. They tend to forget it later. This is a comedy after all. Again, Lower Decks delivers the themes, the message, pretty much every episode. They kind of drive it home. Unlike other new treks, this trek, for what it's worth, reminds me a lot more of old Trek, but with added swearing and freaking gutterball humor. That's Lower Decks. But this episode was funny. To me, I laughed at this. I know humor and what makes you laugh is largely subjective, but I found this episode kind of funny. A few moments are going to stick with me. I think this is the funniest one yet. This is Paradoxus, Crisis Point. Literally a sequel, okay? We had a holodeck film play out in a previous episode with Vindicta. I believe Mariner calls this holographic movie part of the Vindicta-verse. You know, this is a complicated review, okay? There is 4 different plots running at the same time, concurrently, in this episode. A, B, C, and D. How do they intertwine? 2 of them are holographic and not real. 2 of them are emotional and in the mind. So this is like a bottle episode, but it's even more bodily because it just takes place in the holodeck. Mostly. Lots of funny jokes. Tons and tons and tons of references. Let's get into it and see what this episode holds. Paradoxus. Boimler has engineered a new holographic movie, okay? A sequel to Mariner's Vindicta. However, he's allowed to do that because Vindicta, that being Mariner's holodeck movie, was based on his coding. So we have a pre-intro scene that sets everything up, and it's just what occurs in the holodeck is such a fanfic that it can throw shade at everything else in Star Trek that feels like a fanfic. You know what I mean? Like, it's the jester, so it can criticize the king, right? And it plays that up to great effect. So, sometimes it's not very funny, sometimes it's annoying, but there's the few bits I did find funny are going to stick with me, and I'll explain why. You see, our plot has the Melpinar triplets, Duras sisters, anyone, Romulan 3-way command of an ugly Romulan ship. Anything that's not a warbird or a Romulan bird of prey to me is ugly. That's just how I am with my Romulan ships. But this and by Warbird, I mean the Deredex. This Romulan ship is one of those long, flat Romulan ships that's just kind of ugly and boring. And, well, they're trying to destroy the Cerritos. The Cerritos, though, has on board a secret Starfleet prototype of a time control device called the Chronogami. Get it? Chrono because time, and Gami because it folds time. Boop. Like origami. And they're trying to get control of it, and they're firing at it. And just like in First Contact, every single event in this episode is taken from a previous Star Trek production, okay? So like in First Contact, there's another starship approaching. It's the Wayfarer. Beautiful shot of a Sovereign class shows up. Man, Picard wishes they had this, and it swoops in heroically, saving the day, and thus starts our plot. Wayfarer, captain of the Wayfarer, is Bucephalus Dagger. Everybody on this ship, in Boimler's holographic film, has this hilarious over-the-top name that it's just... It invites you to laugh at it. It invites you to laugh at Star Trek. It invites you to turn that critical section off in your brain and just enjoy the insanity of it, because this is a holodeck episode. We're in a cartoon that bills itself as a comedy. Okay? It takes place in Star Trek, so there has to be a certain amount of seriousness to it. Now we add on top of that the layer of abstraction of being in a holodeck. So imagine the insanity we can accept as viewers in the holodeck in this cartoon, right? And they use it to great effect. Okay, Bucephalus Dagger is informed by Carol Freeman of the Cerritos that the Chronogami has to be rescued from the Romulans. It was stolen from the Cerritos, and if they don't get it, basically Romulans are going to be able to control time. Big problem. What are we going to do? We go to we go to a Starfleet station on this moon, and it is just literally exactly ripped out of Star Trek 2. The Chronogami, just swap it for the Genesis device. The computer they look at, and they're explaining how I almost call it the Genesis device. They're explaining how the Chronogami works, and it is exactly like Star Trek 2. It's right down to every detail. The forgotten love interest, the old flame, used to be Carol. Now it's this new character in love with Bucephalus Dagger. How do we stop the Chronogami? Well, the Romulans must be going to Tatassior 9, a favorite of black market weapons dealers. This is exactly like Star Trek 5, the world they go to. Our characters, by the way, have these, like I said, over-the-top names. Bucephalus Dagger, Mina Vesper, Silvo Toussaint. That's Rutherford is Toussaint, and he says, "Oh, it's a cool Cajun name." And he says, "Hey, mon chéri, I guarantee." Okay, that's enough. I won't do that accent. And I was like, "Guarantee, dude? Are they shoving in a Justin Wilson reference from freaking Justin Wilson Cooking? Am I crazy? Is guarantee something all Cajuns say, or is it just Justin Wilson? Look up Justin Wilson, that chef, and he always says, "I guarantee, onion, carrot," the way he pronounces things. You know, isn't that more Butamus, with that onion? All kinds of funny little things like that, little bits of idiomatic speech. Was it a reference or just an accident? Anyway, it was pretty funny. I didn't expect to see that in Star Trek. What plays out, though, is the emotional journey that Boimler goes on. You see, for a moment, he has a comm badge signal from Ransom. He has to go to Ransom's office. He finds out, you see, after leaving the holodeck, that his doppelganger, his clone, Will Boimler, on the U.S.S. Titan has died. Freak accident. Sometimes have gas some kind of gas seeped into his quarters. He died in his sleep. Hell of a way to go. For those of you who don't know, at the end of season 1, Boimler transferred to the Titan. However, we got Boimler back into the show. We saved the status quo by creating like a transporter clone of him. You know how that works. It's happened multiple times. But the one that was left behind in the Titan, the one not on the show, has died. So it asks the question, right? I think that was probably the whiteboard question in the writer's room. Be it real or imagined. What do you do when your exact clone dies? How do you feel with that? They're not you, but they're exactly like you. You're exactly like them. What does that mean when they die? And a question that can only truly be answered in sci-fi. That's when sci-fi is good. We're using the medium of sci-fi, the genre, the setting, the technology, to tell a story that would otherwise be impossible in any other genre or time frame. Right? So in that regard, this episode qualifies as a good piece of sci-fi. It echoes my favorite episode of TNG, Yesterday's Enterprise. You remember from that episode, spoilers, okay, TNG. Tasha Yar dies, but because of an incident with a temporal incursion from the past into an alternate future, we find an alternate Tasha Yar who has not died. She is informed of the prime timeline Tasha Yar's useless, meaningless death, and she gets the opportunity to give herself a meaningful death by saving the good future. Very interesting question. And it's echoed here, as I said. What do you do when your alternate self dies? How do you treat that? In TNG, we went back and gave ourselves a better death. In this, we gave ourselves a better life. You see, it's the opposite. All complicated questions can have two opposite and correct answers. Thematically, emotionally, and in terms of the moral message that's being sent. Right? And that's where this episode, that's the core of this episode that the entire thematic journey hinges on. Okay? And when they strike that, everything else is secondary. Everything is subordinate to that. If they can hit on that theme and drive it home properly, you've got a good episode. It doesn't matter what else happens. You've got an episode that you can chew on in the mind. You've got an episode that sautés in the pan for a while, building up the flavor. Yeah. It gets better with time. It gets better the more you think about it. Like fine wine. Instead of aging like mayonnaise. Like a lot of episodes did. Not to get off on too much of a tangent. Our plot continues. And I'm just going to run through our holodeck movie. Our holodeck movie splits into two eventually. Once we get to Tatasciore 9, it's exactly like Star Trek 5. This desert town full of ruffians, colorful characters, and spiritual gurus. In Star Trek 5, this would be, spoilers, Cybok. In this, it's a character called Knick Knack, and some character trying to get our characters to find Kitty Ha, which is either a place, a god, or a state of spiritual being. I don't know. But our team splits, you see. Boimler and Mariner go off to find Kitty Ha, because now Boimler doesn't want to just complete this plot he wrote. He wants to find the ghost in the machine. He wants to find the spiritual answers in the holodeck program. He made this holodeck program, and he's trying to get it to do things it was not designed to do. He's trying to get random answers from a machine to give him meaning. Right? And I don't know if the writers really thought of this, but it's interesting. It's an interesting concept to use the holodeck to give yourself spiritual meaning from an emotionless AI program. Right? It's not telling you, it can't tell you something that isn't already known right? It can't interpolate based on incomplete information, and it can't make connections between disparate pieces of information in a sublime way that sentient beings do. But isn't this an interesting idea? You know, there's definitely something more going on here. Again, Ghost in the Machine. We're looking for the meaning of life inside a holodeck program. Might I say this part of the adventure was more interesting than the adventure that Rutherford and Tendi went on. This is a voyage of self-discovery, and Tendi and Rutherford aren't left out. Tendi and Rutherford they use the chronogamy portal that the Romulans created to go to, 2341? Interesting time. We don't see much of it. But they go to a world where Ambassador Koro is trying to speak to the Algaic slime mind in order to negotiate some kind of deal that is important for the future of the universe inside this holodeck movie. Very funny. This should remind you of Star Trek 4. I guess this review is just going to be rife with spoilers. A lot of the reference getting in this episode hinges on you understanding the overall plot, arc, and conclusion, and details therein of a million different Star Trek movies. So I wouldn't watch this review even if you haven't seen all the Star Trek movies, because in Star Trek 4 we need to talk to whales. Not to get too much into it, just replace whale probe with Algaic slime mind in this world, okay? Perhaps it has some kind of a psychic method of communication. Ambassador Koro is a giant squid. We need to go back in time again to Australia in 1980 something, and there's a giant squid inside some type of an aquarium or museum, and we have to save it from the Romulans who have gone back to try to stop the meeting between Ambassador Koro and the Algaic slime mind. All very confusing, which is intentional. It's a joke. This is a holodeck movie. It was written by an idiot. I shouldn't say that about Boimler, but it certainly feels like it was idiotically written, full of fanfic tier writing that Mariner and the others are quick to point out, right? Throwing shade at all kinds of Star Trek productions. Oh, what if we go back in time and then we create an alternate timeline where we're played by a younger version of ourselves? That would be highly scientifically inaccurate, Tendi says. Yeah, I guess it would be. Tendi and Rutherford. Tendi doesn't understand why Rutherford isn't taking this seriously. Rutherford is just watching this like it's a movie. Tendi's really acting it out. Tendi really believes it. This eventually comes to a blow-up point where they go back to 2161, where the Romulans are trying to stop the founding of the Federation, and Rutherford is disarming a bomb, and he gets into like a little bit of a screaming match with Tendi. Why aren't you taking this seriously? I don't know. What if I really was the captain? Would you trust me then? And then Rutherford says, would you want to be the captain? Yes! Yes, I want to be the captain! Which is an interesting thing to admit for Tendi. Because Tendi, a blue shirt, medic, science, you don't associate them too much with aspirations for captaincy. And Tendi just admitted it here. I mean, I don't want to be captain at all. I like wearing red. TOS red, that is. But Tendi admitting this, there's a fire and a passion and visions of grandeur in her mind. You see, in the back of her mind, that only came out in an extreme situation. You see, stressful situations, real or not, tend to reveal what we're really thinking. It reveals your id, your inner mind space, the things you would say when you're not normally being yourself. We find the new side of Tendi. Previously, we saw Tendi reveal her piracy, action-adventure side. Now we're seeing Captain Tendi. Okay? We're seeing a possible future for Tendi. So we're going on a journey emotionally with Boimler and Tendi in this episode. Okay? What would you have us do? Captain Tendi. Your crew is at your command, according to Rutherford. And then they just do what you would expect they would do, hence the paradox. They use the chronogami to go back in time and switch the chronogami on the Cerritos with a bomb, so when the Romulans stole it, the Romulan ship blew up. Tendi saving the day. A great Tendi moment. However, Boimler and Mariner are on the spiritual journey to find Katiha, and one of our alien characters takes his shirt off to reveal a saggy, flabby skin back with a map written on his backstory. You can see the holodeck trying to make up stuff based on what they're saying because they're going off in a direction that it was not programmed to do. So it's just inventing things on the fly, and the story gets more and more stupid. So where they would find God in Star Trek V, they find Katiha, which is a large talking purple and black volcano creature. Once they follow the map, this is where Mariner finds out about Boimler's, issue, where his clone died. Mariner leaves the holodeck momentarily in a rage after fighting with Boimler, saying, "No, your holodeck program sucks. No, yours sucks. This one's terrible. This one doesn't even have a real ending." She talks to Ransom. "I'm surprised you haven't heard." Flips around his console. Boimler's clone on the Titan died. And then he says, my favorite moment in this episode, the funniest thing. This is how you do comedy in Star Trek without hurting anybody. Just something that's kind of silly, delivered weird, and sticks in the mind. It's going to be rent-free in my mind for a while. He's reminiscing about, being sad. And, when I'm blue, I don't know what I would do without my best friends. The bartender, Nurse Westlake, and Matt the Whale. Friends for life. He shows a little picture, and it's the dolphin and two guys and Ransom in the pool together, and Cetacean Ops, just smiling and high-fiving and shit. Oh my god. Anyway, Boimler and Mariner arrive at Katiha. He gets no meaningful answers. Interesting answer from Katiha is that the purpose of life is a life with purpose. I kind of like that. They are not content with these answers. Boimler proceeds to break into Katiha's body, go deep inside. There's a strange placard on the inside. Wipes it clean. Katiha is Kitty Hawk. Where the Wright Flyer, the first heavier than air flight, supposedly, was flown on Earth, in a completely inane and nonsensical callback to Voyager that doesn't make any sense, which is fine. It's not supposed to make sense. Boimler wrote this just to have needless callbacks to everything and just to be a hackneyed, slapped-together story in 5 minutes. Not unlike some recent new Trek. In a fit of rage, he passes out. Later we learn from dehydration. And he has a bizarre dream where he goes to Kirk's ranch. And where is it? Iowa. And we see the mailbox. Kirk. Are we going to meet Captain Kirk? Finally. Here we go. He goes up to the barn. There's the horse. Hello, Captain Kirk? No, it's George Takei. Great. Playing Hikaru Sulu. Boimler says, even better. Whoa. We're not supposed to be playing favorites here. Are the writers playing favorites? Why did he say even better? I wouldn't say that about anybody from TOS at this point. Given their advanced age and the nature of TOS, I wouldn't be playing favorites right now. Okay? If this was the writers doing this, I don't know why Boimler was expecting to find Kirk, right? And then he found Sulu, and then it said even better. I didn't appreciate that. I don't know what that means. It's like TOS has entered the realm of foundational mythology for Star Trek, and it's now beyond. It's now beyond playing favorites. Okay, not to get into it. It's a complicated emotional and psychological reason why you shouldn't be doing that, but for some reason this just crossed a line. I couldn't explain why. It wasn't in the realm of funny. It was just like, it was just confusing to me, and it's gonna age stupid. But he meets Sulu, and Sulu delivers admittedly some pretty good advice. Ultimately, Boimler is on a quest to understand why we have randomness of death. Why do people die so randomly? You live with purpose and die with randomness. Randomness is like the opposite of purpose. It's the opposite of agency. And Sulu says, unexpected joy is the reflection of random death, right? So, the randomness of death and bad things is the other side of the coin, where on the other side there is unexpected joy. So if you have unexpected joy come out of nowhere, you can also have unexpected bad. Two sides of that same coin of luck, call it fate, call it what you will. Sulu shows up to deliver an interesting line. And I think they did Sulu good. But although it was in an illusion, an episode that Boimler's mind went through when he collapsed. Hilariously, the horse bites him, and he just comes back to life, waking up in medbay, having learned what it means to have a life of purpose, what it means to accept the randomness of death, and what it means to live in place of someone who was your exact clone and died for no reason. The purpose of life is a life with purpose. Very good episode. This episode, the thematic hinge of this episode, would not function properly if Boimler knew what happened in the cliffhanger of this episode. Call it a cliffhanger if you want. At the very end of this episode, it is revealed that a Defiant-type ship operated by Section 31 recovered Boimler's body that was buried at space in a torpedo tube, not unlike a previous Star Trek film, wink wink. It worked. They wake up Will Boimler in the torpedo tube. He gets up, and they give him the black Section 31 badge. And at the last moment, we can throw shade at New Trek. Why do we have a black badge? I mean, if we're a secret organization, why do we want to go around advertising it? The Section 31 individual can offer no explanation. Do you want to be dead? Like, Starfleet already thinks you're dead. Do you want to be really dead? You better put on the black badge. Because there is no explanation. It does not make any sense. Alright? So yeah, we're throwing shade at everybody, you know? It rains on the just and unjust alike, and a lowering tide lowers all boats. That was our episode. Paradoxus. Crisis Point 2. A literal sequel to a previous episode, except it was a movie taking place in the holodeck. Great use of the holodeck to have our characters go on an emotional journey. A journey of self-discovery for Tendi wanting captaincy, and Boimler discovering how to accept death randomness, if you will. You know, accepting your mortality and trying to make something of it. A reflection of the episode of TNG, Yesterday's Enterprise. What happens in the plot of the holodeck movie is not super significant. So that's kind of why I brushed over it. There's lots of funny events. There's acts of daring do. There's adventure. There's gravity bikes. There's action that is there, I believe, partially to make fun of the action elements in previous Star Trek films, which typically did not work that well. Those movies do not perform as action movies. They are sci-fi. They are sci-fi adventure plots with a thematic significance. That is Star Trek, and the action in this is in the purposes of the show. It's there for our characters to just have fun, but for the viewers, it's to make fun of previous less than stellar moments in the series history. Okay, gravity bikes, high speed chases over land, beating up people on an enemy ship and then taking over their ship to find Katiha. Okay. It's Star Trek 1, it's Star Trek 2, it's Star Trek 4, it's Star Trek 5, it's Star Trek First Contact, it's Star Trek Generations, and Star Trek Nemesis, maybe? All jammed into one super film, a supercut, if you will, of the fun we had in the past. And it was fun today. Musically. Tiny little cues and callbacks to all these different Star Trek soundtracks. When ships show up, beautiful shots. The Wayfarer looked awesome. At the beginning, you see Bucephalus Dagger on the bridge of the Wayfarer. Behind him, there's a diagram of the Luna class? Like it was still the Titan? Is that a mistake? Did they reuse the bridge graphics from the Titan? I don't know. But, anyway, a visual feast, funny jokes. I like the character Knick-Knack. He follows Boimler on his adventure through this holographic film. I love you, Purple Head. No, I mean, I'm in love with you. I'm in love with you too, buddy. That's my second favorite moment from this episode. A funny moment that I'm going to remember for a while, maybe forever. Yeah, it's quite the adventure. Interesting visuals, interesting music, and a thematic core that involves a quest of self-discovery for at least two characters, Tendi and Boimler. I did not appreciate Mariner's constant blabbing about, the trappings of the movie. Here comes the romance plot. Oh, here comes the third act twist. Oh, ha ha ha. Mariner, just again, is the squeaky wheel of this episode. I don't need a fourth wall break from Mariner every 5 seconds. Definitely don't need it in the reality of the show. But I only kind of don't need it in the holographic movie. I know it's a movie. You don't have to keep telling me, Mariner. I guess that's par for the course for Mariner. That's Paradoxes. A good episode. Concepts to remember. Guest appearance from George Takei. We see a Defiant type ship. We see a Sovereign class in the U.S.S. Wayfarer. A plot that references all of past Star Trek. References do not make the show, I might add. What made this show was Boimler's personal quest. If he had known at the end that his clone in Will Boimler had survived, then it would have completely defeated the purpose of this episode. Because he does not know about it, his brain now has time to absorb the lesson into his mind frame, okay? And if it works for him, it should work for us. See, you see, we know the joke. We're on the joke. We're in on it. They're not. So in my mind, it's okay to have this ending. I can see how some people wouldn't like it. They could see it as this ending flying in the face of Boimler's journey to accept the death of the other Boimler. But he doesn't know that. So in my opinion, it works. Maybe you think differently. I was okay with the cliffhanger. You might not be. For all these reasons, I'm going to have to go ahead and give this episode a 7. This is a rewatchable episode. This is not a skipper. This is a keeper. Lots to chew on, lots to think about, lots to look at, and lots to listen to. It hits on all the different pillars of what I think makes a Star Trek episode good. The 4 different concurrent plot lines running. The plot with Tendi discovering her desire for captaincy, Boimler discovering his and dealing with the death of the other Boimler, going to Katiha and going back in time to the founding of the Federation to stop that bomb from going off. These 4 different plots playing together. It was a little bit hairy, but in my opinion, it didn't drag the episode down. I found it easy to follow, easy to digest, and sometimes if you're eating your vegetables, you can have a little dessert at the end. And that's okay. And that dessert is all the silly action that took place. The silly callbacks, the stupid jokes, and the bartender, Nurse Westlake, and Matt the Whale. Friends for life. I'm Mark. Hopefully I'm going to be your friend for life as well. I'll see you when next I see you.